Hello, my dear friends. You're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 28th of November of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. First, we're going to talk about Kiev, once again about the common situation in Ukraine. Today we have a video from Sumy area. This is the area that located on the border with Russian Federation. This is the area that was attacked by the Russian forces, the first area that was attacked by the Russians in 2022 when the special military operation began. And according to this guy, he's the head of recruitment office, government recruiting office of Ukraine in Sumy. He told people that during the autumn mobilization campaign, the Sumy authorities managed to mobilize just 8% of personnel, 8% of people of the plan. They managed to complete the plan for just 8%. Obviously, this is disaster. This is the disaster, and this is not the only region. Obviously, every single region in Ukraine haven't managed to complete the plan that was sent them from the Kyiv, from the capital of Ukraine. And obviously the main reason of the failure is not like the lowest level of population. There are a lot of people in Ukraine. Some sources are saying that currently there are around 20 millions of people in Ukraine. Some sources are saying that there are more or less, but there are enough of people to make mobilization. So what is the question? And the main reason of the failure of mobilization is the executors. The main problem lays in executors. I'm talking about people like him. The people who goes on the streets, who capture Ukrainian men and send them to the front line and so on. And the main reason of that is that the Ukrainians do have possibilities to identify the recruiters, and this is the main problem. Furthermore, there were a lot of cases in the past when the Ukrainians tried to revenge to these recruiters. There were cases about some killings of those recruitings and many other things. So basically, these guys who are currently doing this job is the worst people in Ukraine. Nobody loves them, everybody hates them, and nobody wants to be a person who will be hated by everybody, obviously. So that's why the Ukrainian authorities understand the situation, and this is the reason why the Ukrainians took a decision to hire Western countries, Western private companies to complete mobilization process. I'm not saying that this is like solution, this is the cure, but obviously the Ukrainians now are no longer able to identify these people, and obviously the process will be speed up and increased, and the Ukrainians will complete the mobilization process before spring and summer, and the Ukrainians will be ready before the next offensive operation that might take place in the next year. Furthermore, today we got more interesting updates from Kiev. According to information we have, somebody tried to kill the wife of the head of Ukrainian intelligence service. This woman is the wife of Kirill Budanov. Let's take a look at Kirill Budanov one more time. This is it. And this person, Kirill Budanov, is responsible for destroying Crimean Bridge, for killing a lot of people in Russia, like a lot of famous bloggers, for killing of authorities and people in the Kherson and Zaporizhzhia area who took a decision to support Russian power and so on. So he's a very powerful person in Ukraine, very important. And today there was an attempt to kill his wife. And not just his wife, but according to information we have, and two more officers were killed, probably her let's say defenders or security or something like this. But the sources are saying that she was hospitalized, and she had the necessary things with her, medical things with her, and according to information we have, the killer tried to use poison as a main weapon to kill her. So obviously this is something like another step, or something like to blame Russia, because according to the Western countries, poison is the, let's say, the famous weapon of Putin for his let's say political executions and so on. But when talking about Kirill Budanov and the situation in Ukraine, obviously there are a lot of camps, a lot of forces, a lot of people who probably wanted to get Budanov and to kill him. We know that there are at least 3 camps in Ukraine. Zelensky and Zelensky office is the first camp in Ukraine, so the first political camp. The second one is Zaluzhny and the military authorities. Budanov probably is the third camp because he has his own power, own forces and so on. And all of them currently, you need to understand one thing, that Zelensky, Zaluzhny, all these fightings in the open fields and so on are not the fightings for the power. Neither Zelensky nor Zaluzhny nor Budanov currently fight for the power. They're fighting for their lives because they understand that the process is getting to the end. The process is getting to the same things that the story in Germany ends in 1945. So we'll see what is going to be next. Now we need to expect the next move from Budanov. Obviously, he has the information who was the executor and who was the person who hired the killers to kill him and who gave the orders. And now we need to expect, because obviously he will revenge. He will revenge, and his revenge might be very bloody. Now we are moving to the situation on the ground, and first we're going to start about Kherson area. When talking about the global situation on the combat lines, we see that after a few days of operational pause due to the bad weather and the great storm, the Russians start publishing some updates, some geolocations, either the Ukrainians as well, which confirms something that the nature start alive after the bad weather. On this video, for example, we see the bombardments of Kherson area with FAB-500. The Russians renewed their bombardments after a few days of bad weather, so obviously there's still a lot of job to do. When talking about Krynki itself, we don't have any changes on the ground, because during the previous few days, during the bad weather, the Ukrainians managed to dig in deeper and to stabilize a little bit the front line, and now the Russians, due to the small operational pause, need to start everything from the beginning. But no matter the situation, the Russians are pushing, and according to some information, the Russians managed to gain some positions on the flanks of the Krynki front line. Furthermore, we got another bombardments of Ukrainian positions in the vicinity of Kherson. According to the Ministry of Defense, the Ukrainians during the previous 24 hours lost 40 soldiers, 5 armored vehicles, and 1 artillery system. And probably on this scene we can see the destruction of that artillery system that was mentioned in the Ministry of Defense report. Now we are moving further to Zaporizhzhia area. According to not to Zaporizhzhia, before we finish with Zaporizhzhia, I would like to pay your attention to one important area between Zelenodolsk and Velika Kostromka. On this video, we see the Russians published the video how they managed to discover Ukrainian radar in this area, probably air defense radar or something like this, and as a result of Lancet strike, that radar was destroyed. So what is important about this video for understanding of this question, we need to increase the number of updates since the beginning of the month. And if we do this, we're gonna see that there were 2 more attacks, 2 more explosions to the west from Velika Kostromka. For example, on the south of Zelenodolsk, the Russians have already discovered the Ukrainian radar in this area, but the previous radar was destroyed as a result of Tornado S strike or something like this, the type of weapon like this. You see the very powerful explosion, and a few days later that took place on the 24th of November, so 4 days ago, and on the 26th of November the Russians managed to discover another engineering machine in this area, maybe another radar system or something like this. So based on these 3 videos, we can make a conclusion that the Russians are pretty focused in this area, and now their main focus is to suppress the Ukrainian air defense possibilities, and during just previous 4 days they managed to destroy probably up to 3 radars or the equipment that Ukrainians use for air defense systems. I'll remind you that this is the key region for the Ukrainian air attacks. When the Ukrainians tried to attack the Russian positions in Crimea or Crimean Bridge, mainly they use this polygon as the main launching missile polygon, no matter the airfields they're using. There are few airfields that the Ukrainians are able to use for these purposes. The Ukrainians can use the airfields in Dnipro, the Ukrainians can use airfields in Nikolaev, and of course the Ukrainians do have possibilities to use airfields from the Stara Konstantinov and of course from Mirgorod. So this is the main launching areas, I understand. And of course the Ukrainians try to secure this territory with radars because they need to secure their Su-24 and Su-27 that left, and now the Russians are trying to solve this issue forever. Now we are moving to Zaporizhzhia area. We got also few updates from this territory. After the weather got better, the Russians launched a serious counterattacks on the western flank of the village. As a result of clashes on this direction, the Ukrainians lost 65 soldiers and 2 armored vehicles. As you can see, according to the level of losses is normal. This is not like the lowest and not the highest. So there is a regular military routine on this territory with clashes in both sides, from the Ukrainians and from the Russians. And main clashes are taking place along this line. And this is something like the battle for initiative. And who wins the battle for the initiative for this line will determine and will control the next phase of the clashes. There might be the clashes either for Novoprokopovka, Kopany, or for Robotyne. So we'll see. And now we are moving to the south Donetsk direction, and we're going to start with Vremivka tactical bridgehead. The Russians continue offensive operation in direction of Stara Mayorskaya. The Russians are moving along this tree line, trying to capture and clear trenches by trenches. Today we got another geolocated videos on these scenes. We can see the counter-attack of Ukrainian forces. First of all, we need to increase the number of updates, let's say since from the 26th of November. On the 27th, yesterday, we got the video how the Russian stormtroopers were clearing these trenches. They captured significant number of Ukrainian forces. They managed to kill also a very big number of troopers. And after that, the Russians established control over this territory and started the process of digging in deeper. And during the previous day, the Ukrainians made few attempts to counterattack the Russian positions because they understand the value of this territory, and the main thing that they understand that from now on the Russians have established complete control over the main supply road that goes from Rovnopol to Staromayorsk, because it's not a very good idea to use the road from Velika Novoselovka, Neskuchna, Starozhova, Makarovka. These territories located in the lowland, and there are lots of destroyed armored vehicles, probably mines. So, of course, the Ukrainians are using this supply road, but this one that we have added to the map is the main priority supply road that Ukrainians use. And now this territory, this road is under complete Russian fire. So that's why the Ukrainians made lots of attempts to counterattack. All those attacks were repelled by the Russians. The Ukrainians were defeated. The Russians managed to capture a few more Ukrainian soldiers, the prisoners of war, and they managed to dig in deeper. The Ukrainians during that operation were trying to attack and to slow down the Russians by attacking their forces on the south of this area, maybe evacuation teams or something like this. But no matter the situation, one more time, the Ukrainians were defeated and the Russians managed to establish 100% control over this territory. And now the Russians are ready to start or to proceed or to continue their offensive operation further in direction of the road, and the most important, in direction of Stara Mayorskaya. Now Stara Mayorskaya is half encircled, and I will not be surprised if we see some actions in direction of Stara Mayorsk within the next 48 hours when the weather gets better. Now we are moving to Novomykhailivka area, and we got some updates from this territory. The Russians continue offensive operation at least in two directions. The Russians are storming and moving further to Novomykhailivka. The speed of Russian progress is around 100 meters a day. So according to this estimation, the Russians are going to get inside of the village very soon. Another attack the Russians are making in direction of Vuhledar, but yet without even a single geolocated confirmation. The only thing we have from this direction is Russian Lancet strike against Ukrainian positions in the village by the name of Antonovka. On this video we see how the Russians managed to discover the Ukrainian artillery system or maybe air defense system Strela 10, and as a result of Lancet strike that system was destroyed. Now we are moving to Avdiivka direction. We got a lot of very interesting updates from this territory, and according to information we see the main clashes, the main updates from this territory are coming from the southern part of the southern flank from the village by the name of Tonenka and Severnaya. The Russians during the previous days made lots of attempts to attack in this direction, and we got a lot of videos from this territory. Let's increase the numbers of updates. For example, this video was published yesterday, and on this video we see a significant number of destroyed Russian armored vehicles that were destroyed during the first days of Russian offensive operation. Of course, the Russians will continue doing attacks, and today we got one geolocated confirmation. For example, on the western flank, let's say, of Severnaya foothold, the Russian tank was trying to move further. On this video, we see Russian tank was moving along the tree lines. Then the tank moved and got its fire position, and from its fire position, the Russians started bombing and attacking the Ukrainian forces on the the next through line. After the Russians were out of ammo, they start to withdraw their positions, and the Ukrainians managed to damage the Russian tank, maybe with FPV drone, maybe with anti-tank missile, but the Russian tank managed to survive, and basically the tank left the territory of clashes. So if we take a look at this like map, the Russian tank was moving something like this. The tank got this position. From this position, the Russians start bombing the Ukrainian positions on the next through line on this defense belt. After the Russians tank became out of ammo, he tried to return back, and somewhere on this direction, on this position, the Russian tank was damaged, probably with FPV drone, but managed to survive. Also today we got updates that the Russians managed to enter Severna, and that the few buildings in this area was captured by the Russians, and that the part of the village currently is under Russian control. I'm not sure about, that when talking about the source of this information, the source is very reliable. The source is very reliable, and so that's why I have added this source on the map. But we have a lot of updates that are saying completely opposite thing. The Ukrainian counterattacks, the Russians haven't managed to develop significant attacks on the western flank. And the bombardments of Ukrainian reconnaissance team on the forest on the south of Severna. So a lot of updates are saying complete opposite information, that the Russians haven't entered Severna at all. So we'll see. Let's wait, and then we will see whether we are able to trust this source or not about Avdiivka and about Severna. One more time, when talking about the southern industrial area, according to information we have, the Ukrainians completely were forced to step back from the, let's say, the residential area by the name of Vinogradniki, and the Russians managed to establish full control over this territory, and now this is the area of control on this side of the front line. So we'll see what is going to be next. Obviously, the Russians will continue the pressure, but they need a few days to regroup. We haven't received anything from the northern direction. We got just one update from Stepova. As we discussed, the Ukrainians launched a series of counterattacks on the Russian positions using Leopards, Bradleys, infantry, and so on. And as a result of clashes, the Russians, and also due to the very bad weather, the Russians took a decision to step back and to leave this territory completely, and the Russians stop any clashes for this bridgehead, at least until the weather gets better. Maybe after that the Russians will renew their attempts, and obviously they're going to do this. When talking about Donetsk direction, as a result of clashes on this area, the Ukrainians lost 135 soldiers and 3 armored vehicles. As you can see, the level of losses is the minimal. Yesterday there was a little bit even less, 110 soldiers, today 135, but this is nothing in comparison, let's say, with we have like the day, let's say, I don't know, now it's almost every single day the same level of losses. Yes, and no changes. On the 14th of November, the level of losses was 300, so like almost like half a month ago. From that moment, the level of losses was too low. We will bypass Gorlovka because we don't have any, maybe one. We have one important one. The Ukrainian FPV drones were attacking the Russian positions in the city or in the industrial area that is located on the south of the Terikon, which confirms the Russian presence and the Russian control in this territory. So obviously, according to these geolocations, this industrial area below this Terikon is under complete Russian control. When talking about Bakhmut Artyomov's direction, we have few updates, and the most important updates are coming from Ivanovska. The Russians continue bombardment of this territory, and the main purpose of these bombardments is to pin down the Ukrainians and not to allow them to send some operational reserves in direction of, let's say, Khromova, so not to allow the Ukrainians to use the road. So, and probably the Russians managed to do this. The Ukrainians couldn't redeploy the reserves there, and as a result of offensive operation, first the Russians managed to enter this village Khromova, and currently the Russians are trying to clear this territory from the presence of the Ukrainian forces. But we haven't seen even a single geolocation. So maybe this is Russian propaganda or speculations, maybe to stretch the Ukrainian focus in this area. Now we are moving to Lyman direction, and we got another Lancet strike geolocation, and this is the fourth geolocation of Lancet strike during the previous 24 hours. On this video we see the movements and the position of Ukrainian artillery system, and as a result of Lancet strike, that artillery system was destroyed. So we see that the Russians are using like Lancet every day, and it's like the most important and the most probably powerful and effective type of weapon of Russian forces. The level of losses of Ukrainians on Lyman front line during the previous 24 hours were around 40 soldiers and 2 armored vehicles. So as you can see, the level of losses on this direction is also the minimal in comparison with the previous days. And the same story we can say about Kupin's direction. As a result of clashes on this area, the Ukrainians lost another artillery system as a result of Lancet strike, SAU-2S1, and the level of losses of Ukrainians were around 30 soldiers and 1 artillery system. So as you can see, nothing special, but when talking about this direction, for the first time since the beginning of probably creation of this front line, we received the first geolocated video from Sinkivka. So if we increase the number of updates since the beginning of November, we had a lot of updates from the north. We have like the video how the Russians were bombing these Ukrainian trenches on the 2nd of November, and these trenches, as you can see, were located right in front of Sinkivka. This is like the edge position, but this is not like Sinkivka. We had some text messages about the clashes inside. We had some updates about bombardments of the tree lines that located on the north, and many other things. We had the videos of bombardments of Ukrainian positions inside the forest on the south of Lyman Первый. But for the previous 5-6 months, we haven't received even a single geolocation from the village, but we had maybe dozens of reports that the Russians either entered or forced the Ukrainians to step back. And today, on the 28th of November, we got the first geolocated video from the northern part of Sinkivka, which means that the real process of the storming of this village has started. And we can say that the 28th of November of 2023 is the date of the beginning of Sinkivka offensive operation or assault operation, whatever. On this video, we see the Ukrainian tank, as you can see, on the edge, like say on the border of the city, of the village, not somewhere in the central part or in the southern part. It's on the edge position of the village, on the northern part of the village. So it's like the first buildings. And on this video, we see how the Ukrainian tank arrived in this area, and the Ukrainians were attacking the buildings and the basements on the northern part of the village, not in the forest, that located like few hundred meters to the north, not in the fields, but the Ukrainian tank was attacking the Russian positions in the village. Of course, that was probably reconnaissance team or sabotage group that entered the northern part before they managed to discover some basements and some positions where the Russians can dig in deeper and just like to make reconnaissance operation, because the Ukrainians were forced to send tanks. As you can see, the Ukrainians were not sending infantry for the clearing operation, because the Ukrainians understand that if they send infantry, their soldiers would be destroyed. So that's why they sent probably T-80 tank. And T-80 tank, after finished bombing and attacking this territory, was forced to turn back and to return to its original positions. And as you can see, maybe the tank managed to damage and wound some Russian soldiers, but the tank haven't managed to establish control over this territory. So as I understand, during the previous days, the Russians managed to concentrate their forces somewhere in this forest, somewhere along this line on the edge of the forest. Now, I'm not saying about the number, because nobody can know this number, just maybe the Russian generals. And from this position, the Russians are trying to make a short attacks in direction of small buildings, small farms. All of them are separate standing, as you can see. And the purpose is to dig in deeper, to take the basements, to force the Ukrainians to send some tanks. And this is not the full video, and that video was published by the Ukrainian side, but we know that there are very high chances One more time, the Ukrainian tank was attacking the Russians somewhere in this area. So the Ukrainian tank was here, and the Ukrainian tank was attacking the basements or the ruins of the village in this area. And obviously, there are very high chances that while the tank was trying to move back, that tank was attacked and damaged by the Russian FPV drones. I think that we're gonna see this geolocated video, because it's like the normal case in this situation to attack tank with FPV drone. So the battle for Sinkivka has started, and all updates that we received during the previous days about very difficult situation, about many other things, probably are true. Obviously, if the Russians manage to develop their positions, obviously they managed to improve the foothold, and there are very high chances, and according to information we have, the Russians managed to establish control over the first May Street. I don't know where exactly this street is located in this village, but like the first update about the streets, it's not like just Sinkivka has fallen, but like details about the streets, where exactly, and so on. So this is very important update, because if Sinkivka falls, we understand for sure if the Russians are able to establish control over the village and to get something like this, obviously we can start saying that the battle for Kupiansk has started as well. And that's it for this video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.